My name is David Landini, and in this video I will discuss the 2019 federal election, its relevance to the Water Act 2007 and the Basin Plan 2012, and the effect that that will have on the people and the electorates of Farrer and Parkes in New South Wales and Nichols and Mallee in Victoria. Now, I just want to make the point that the primary objective of the Labor Party and the Liberal National Party coalition is to form government. Now, government is formed by the party that has the majority of members in the House of Representatives at federal level. Now, Australia has in practice a two-party political system. Government will be formed by either the Labor Party or by the Liberal National Party coalition. There is no other option of a party that will form government. So to form government, as I said, those parties need the majority of members in Parliament. Therefore, in elections, each party will appeal to as many voters in as many electorates as possible throughout Australia. And the intention of that, of course, is to win as many electorates, to win as many elections with their members as the winning candidate and gain the majority of members in Parliament and, of course, form government. That very, very brief description of the objects of political parties explains the reason for the difficulties that the irrigation industry has in regards to the Water Act 2007 and the Basin Plan 2012. While the people in the electorates of Farrer and Parkes in New South Wales and Nichols and Mallee in Victoria are very aware of and understand and appreciate the value of irrigated agriculture, there's a lot of people in other states of Australia, well, in all states of Australia, including New South Wales and Victoria and South Australia, who are actually opposed to irrigated agriculture. For example, in the state election in New South Wales in March 2019, just a few months before the federal election, 435,000 voters in New South Wales voted for the Greens. Now, the Greens are opposed to irrigated agriculture. In other states of Australia, and I mention South Australia in particular, there's a very high number of, a very large number of people in South Australia who are also opposed to irrigated agriculture. So, to put these numbers into perspective, there's approximately 100,000 voters in each electorate. So Farrer in New South Wales, Farrer and Parkes have 100,000 each approximately, that's 200,000 voters. But in that same state of New South Wales, there's 435,000 people who voted for the Greens who are opposed to irrigated agriculture. And if I mention other states such as South Australia, there's approximately 1 million voters in South Australia, and a very, very high proportion of those voters are opposed to irrigated agriculture, particularly in New South Wales and in Victoria. So it's the point to realise is there's a lot more voters in Australia opposed to irrigated agriculture than in favour of it. To be precise, the people opposed to irrigation are not opposed to irrigated agriculture in itself. They are actually opposed to the extraction of water from the Murray River, the Darling River and its tributaries. They are of the opinion that the Murray River and Darling River are suffering all sorts of ill effects caused by the extraction of water for irrigation. Consequently, they are opposed to irrigated agriculture. The recent 2019 federal election displays the difficulty federal politics creates for the irrigation industry. Prior to the election, the Liberal National Party coalition held government with a one-seat majority. Now, with this election, the opinion polls, indicated that the Labor Party would win this election. Naturally, the Liberal National Party coalition were desperate not to lose any seats at all. So, but during campaigning, Tony Burke, the federal shadow minister for water, and the Minister for Watson in the urban areas of Sydney, visited South Australia and publicly promised that if elected, the Labor Party would remove another 450 gigalitres of water from productive use. Now, I'll just explain what a gigalitre of water actually is. It's a measurement of the volume of water. The dimensions of that volume are 100 metres cubed. So 100 metres cubed is 100 metres high, 100 metres in that direction, 100 metres in that direction, and cubed is 1 gigalitre. It's also 1 trillion litres of water. The quantity of water that Tony Burke promised to remove if Labor was elected can be described as a rectangle with a square at one end of 100 metres squared and 45 kilometres long. It's a lot of water. The water that Tony Burke promised to remove is in addition to the water that's already been removed, and that quantity of water is 2,750 gigalitres of water. And of course, the volume of 2,750 gigalitres is the equivalent of a rectangle 100 metres squared at one end and 275 kilometres long. That's a massive amount of water, and that is removed every year. So the reason Tony Burke visited South Australia and made the announcement there, rather than in the electorates, or one of the electorates of, say, Farrer or Parkes or Nichols or Malley, where that decision would actually have a real effect on the people's lives, was because he was of the opinion that that decision, or that political promise, would be popular in South Australia, and he was probably right. So he made that announcement in South Australia to appeal for votes. In particular, there was one seat or one electorate in South Australia that in the previous federal election was very closely matched between the Liberal and Labor Party, and Tony Burke hoped that that announcement would swing that election, or the election in that electorate, to the Labor Party, and perhaps even some others. The Liberal National Party coalition made no promises regarding the Basin Plan. People could assume that they would simply continue with the previous policy of completing the Basin Plan in full and on time. So, due to the Labor Party promising to remove an additional 450 gigalitres from productive use, the voters in Parkes and Farrer and Nichols and Malley were desperate for the Labor Party not to be elected. And by default, because of Australia's two-party system, they were desperate for the Liberal National Party coalition to be elected, even though the Liberal Party and National Party coalition made no promises regarding water. Upon examination, the Liberal National Party decision to promise nothing was an astute decision. If they attempted to match the Labor Party with an equivalent or more or larger withdrawal of water from productive use, they would have antagonised the voters in Farrer, Parkes, Nichols and Malley, and possibly lost those seats. They had the incumbents in those seats, but very possibly could have lost them if those antagonised voters were, or if there was enough of them, to vote accordingly. If, on the other hand, the Liberal National Party coalition had attempted to appeal to the voters in Farrer, Parkes, Nichols and Mallee and promised to put more water back into productive use, or even to scrap the Water Act and the Basin Plan and return the responsibility for management of water to the states, where quite frankly it legitimately belongs. If they had have done that, they would have antagonised, they might have appealed to the voters in Farrer and Parkes, but they would have antagonised 435,000 Green voters in New South Wales, somewhere up around 1 million voters in South Australia, and possibly other voters throughout the rest of Australia as well, and particularly in Victoria. They would have most certainly lost at least one seat in South Australia and possibly more, and they could have possibly lost a number of electorates in the urban areas where there is a significant Green voting presence. So they made no appeal to voters either way on the relating to water. So the election for the voters in Farrer and Parkes and Nichols and Mallee was a choice between the Labor Party, which promised to expand and accelerate the decimation of the irrigated agriculture industry, and the Liberal National Party, which that intended to merely continue the decimation of the irrigated agriculture industry. The election was eventually won by the Liberal National Party coalition with a majority of 2 seats. A very small majority, but nevertheless a majority. In summary, the situation of irrigated agriculture is dire, while the administration of water is the domain of federal politics. A prosperous future for the people of Farrer, Parkes, Nichols and Mallee requires the removal of water from the federal domain and a return to state administration, where it has always been prior to the Water Act and Basin Plan, and where it legitimately belongs.